You've watched birds your whole life, at feeders, in parks, in your own backyard, and in all that time, you have never once seen an old bird. Let's start by confronting the assumption buried inside the question, because the assumption is where most people go wrong. When you ask, where do old birds go? You're assuming that birds get old in the first place, that there's a population of elderly birds out there somewhere, aged and declining, that you're simply not seeing because they've gone somewhere to live out their final days. That assumption is almost entirely false. The reason you never see old birds is not primarily that they're hiding. The reason you never see old birds is that, for the overwhelming majority of birds, old age is something they never reach. Most birds die young, not old and hidden, young, and the numbers behind that statement are so stark that they reframe the entire question. Let's look at what bird mortality actually looks like, because it's nothing like human mortality, and the difference is the key to everything. In humans, most individuals survive childhood, live through adulthood, and die in old age. The bulk of human death is concentrated at the end of the lifespan. Bird mortality is the exact opposite. The bulk of bird death is concentrated at the very beginning. Research on songbird survival consistently finds that somewhere between 60 and 70% of songbirds die within their first year of life. Let that number settle. More than half of every generation of birds is gone before it reaches its first birthday. A clutch of 5 baby cardinals hatched in your yard this spring will, on average, be reduced to 1 or 2 survivors by next spring. The other 3 or 4 are dead, not old. Dead within months of hatching, killed by predators, starvation, weather, disease, or accident during the most vulnerable window of their lives. And it doesn't stop after the first year. For birds that survive to adulthood, the annual mortality rate remains brutally high. Research on adult songbird survival finds annual mortality rates commonly between 40 and 60%, depending on the species. That means that every single year, roughly half of the adult birds in a given population die. Not half over a lifetime, half per year. If you have 10 adult chickadees in your yard this year, statistically 5 of them will be dead by this time next year. And of the 5 survivors, 2 or 3 will die the year after. The population is in a state of constant, rapid turnover. The birds you see are not a stable cast of characters aging slowly over time. They are a rotating roster, continuously being emptied and refilled, with individuals cycling through and dying at a rate that means very few ever live long enough to show any sign of age at all. This is the first and most important answer to the question. You never see old birds because old birds are statistically rare to the point of near non-existence in most populations. The mortality rate is so high, so relentless, and so evenly distributed across every year of adult life that the probability of any individual bird surviving long enough to become what we would call old is vanishingly small. A bird doesn't get to age gracefully because the world kills it long before aging becomes relevant. The elderly bird you're looking for mostly doesn't exist. It died as a fledgling, or in its second winter, or in its 4th breeding season, long before it could ever become old. But here's where it gets genuinely fascinating, because the potential lifespan of a bird and the actual lifespan of a bird are wildly, almost unbelievably different, and that gap tells you something profound about how bird death actually works. In captivity, protected from predators, provided with unlimited food, sheltered from weather, and given veterinary care, birds live astonishingly long lives. A cardinal that averages 3 years in the wild can live to 15 or more in captivity. A chickadee that averages 2.5 years in the wild has reached over 12 in captivity. Small parrots live for decades. The biological machinery of a bird is capable of lasting far, far longer than it ever actually gets to in the wild. The short wild lifespan isn't a limitation of the bird's body. It's a reflection of how dangerous the wild is. The body could go on for years. The environment simply doesn't allow it. This is one of the most remarkable facts in comparative biology, and it's worth pausing on. Birds are, pound for pound, extraordinarily long-lived animals compared to mammals of similar size. A mouse and a sparrow weigh roughly the same. A mouse lives 2 to 3 years maximum. A sparrow, if it survives the gauntlet of the wild, can live well over a decade, and in captivity considerably longer. This is deeply counterintuitive, Because birds have higher metabolic rates than mammals, higher body temperatures, higher blood sugar, and faster heart rates, all of which, by conventional aging theory, should make them age faster and die sooner. Instead, they do the opposite. Research into avian longevity has found that birds possess remarkable cellular protections against the damage that normally drives aging, including highly efficient antioxidant systems, resistance to oxidative damage, and cellular mechanisms that limit the accumulation of the molecular wear that ages most animals. A bird's body is, in a very real sense, built to last. It's just rarely given the chance to. So the potential is there. The body can last 15 years. But in the wild, almost none of them make it. And the ones that do are so few that you will essentially never encounter one that shows visible age. Which brings us to the second half of the answer. Because even among the birds that do survive to relatively old age, you still wouldn't recognize them as old. And this is where bird aging diverges from mammal aging in a way that completely explains the invisibility. When mammals age, they show it. A gray muzzle, cloudy eyes, thinning fur, stiff joints, slower movement, visible decline. We can look at an old dog and know it's old because aging in mammals produces obvious external signs. Birds do not age this way, at least not visibly. A bird that is 8 years old looks essentially identical to a bird that is 2 years old. Its feathers are replaced completely every year through molt, so plumage never grays or thins with age the way fur does. Its eyes remain clear. Its movement remains fast and precise, because a bird that loses even a fraction of its physical performance is immediately killed. There is no external marker of age on a healthy adult bird. A 10-year-old cardinal wears the same brilliant red, moves with the same speed, and looks exactly the same as a bird 1/5 its age. Even if old birds were common, you couldn't identify them by sight, because birds simply don't display age the way the animals we're used to do. This creates a strange reality. The tiny handful of genuinely old birds that do exist in the wild are hiding in plain sight. That cardinal at your feeder could theoretically be 9 years old. You would have absolutely no way of knowing. It looks identical to the 2-year-old cardinal that visited last week. The only way researchers can determine a wild bird's age is through banding, placing a numbered band on a bird's leg and then recapturing or reciting it years later. This is the only reliable method we have for knowing how old any individual wild bird actually is. And it's through banding studies that we know the extraordinary maximum ages some wild birds reach. A banded cardinal was documented at over 15 years old. A banded black-capped chickadee reached over 11. These birds existed. They lived full, long lives in the wild. And to any human who saw them, they were indistinguishable from birds a fraction of their age. Old birds aren't absent from your yard because they've gone somewhere. When they exist at all, they're invisible because age leaves no mark on them. Now let's address the part of this that connects to your other questions, because there is a behavioral dimension to how the rare aging bird meets its end, and it mirrors something you may already understand about dead birds. When a bird finally does begin to decline, whether from genuine old age in those rare cases, or far more commonly, from disease or injury, its behavior changes in a specific and consequential way. A declining bird, one that has lost a step, one whose reactions have slowed, one that can no longer fly quite as fast or react quite as sharply, becomes extraordinarily vulnerable. And in the wild, vulnerability is fatal almost immediately. A bird that slows down does not get to experience a long, gentle decline. It gets caught. The first hawk, the first cat, the first predator that encounters a bird operating below peak performance takes it, because that's exactly the bird a predator can catch. Predators are, in a real sense, a filter that removes any bird showing weakness the moment it shows it. This means that even the process of aging, when it happens at all, is compressed and hidden. A bird doesn't decline slowly over months in visible stages. It performs at full capacity right up until the moment it drops below the threshold that predators can exploit, and then it's gone, quickly, usually in a single predation event, often at night or in cover where you'd never see it. And the declining bird cooperates with its own concealment, in a sense, through the same behavior that hides sick and dying birds generally. A bird that senses it is compromised retreats to dense cover, It stops feeding in the open. It reduces its activity. It goes quiet and still in the thickest vegetation it can find, both because that's the safest place to be when you're vulnerable and because a compromised bird simply doesn't have the energy for normal activity. So in the rare event that a bird does begin to fail from age rather than being killed outright while still healthy, the failing happens out of sight, in the interior of a shrub or a dense thicket, exactly where you never look and never see. The bird withdraws from the visible world before it dies, and then the same scavengers that remove all dead birds remove it, usually within hours. The entire end of a bird's life, on the rare occasions it isn't ended abruptly by a predator, unfolds in concealment. Let's put the whole picture together, because each piece reinforces the others into a complete answer. You never see old birds for a stack of reasons that compound. First and most importantly, most birds never reach old age at all, because mortality rates are so high, 60 to 70% in the first year and 40 to 60% every year after, that the vast majority of birds die young, as fledglings or young adults, long before age becomes possible. Second, the few birds that do survive to old age are so statistically rare that encountering one is extraordinarily unlikely. Third, even those rare old birds are physically indistinguishable from young birds because molt replaces their feathers every year, and any loss of physical performance results in immediate death, so a healthy old bird looks and moves exactly like a young one. Fourth, when a bird finally does decline, it's usually removed instantly by a predator the moment its performance drops, rather than experiencing a visible, gradual decline. And fifth, in the rare cases where a bird fails slowly from age, it does so hidden in dense cover, withdrawn from view, and its body is removed by scavengers within hours of death. Every layer of this hides the same thing. The old bird you're looking for is, in almost every case, either dead long before old age, invisible if it somehow survived, or concealed in its final hours if it's actually dying. There's something worth sitting with in all of this. A reframing of what you're actually seeing when you look out your window. The birds at your feeder look timeless. The same cardinal, the same chickadees, the same robins, morning after morning, year after year, apparently unchanging. It creates an illusion of permanence, as if these are the same individuals faithfully returning, aging slowly alongside you. They are not. What you're watching is a river, not a lake. The water looks the same every day, but it's never the same water. The cardinal at your feeder this year is almost certainly not the cardinal from 3 years ago. That bird is very likely dead. This is its replacement, or its replacement's replacement. A new individual, occupying the same territory, filling the same role, looking identical, but entirely different. The population turns over continuously, invisibly, with the dead constantly replaced by the young in a cycle so seamless that from your window it looks like nothing is changing at all. The permanence is an illusion. Behind it is relentless, rapid, total replacement. And this is why the absence of old birds, once you understand it, is not really a mystery about where the elderly ones go. It's a window into how bird life actually works, and it's far more intense than most people ever realize. Every bird you see is a survivor of odds that killed most of its siblings. Every adult bird at your feeder has already beaten a mortality rate that eliminated the majority of its generation. They are not aging slowly toward a peaceful old age. They are living fast, dying young, being replaced constantly, and performing at full capacity every single day. Because the instant they don't, they're gone. The birds in your yard aren't old, and they aren't going to get old. They're going to be here, bright and fast and seemingly permanent, right up until they're suddenly not replaced by another bird, so similar you'll never notice the difference. You've been watching this your whole life. You just thought you were watching the same birds grow old alongside you. You were actually watching one of the most relentless cycles of death and replacement in the natural world, hidden behind feathers that never gray and a turnover so smooth it looks like stillness. Tell me in the comments, what's the longest you think a single bird has been coming to your yard? Now you know the real answer might be more complicated than you thought. I read everyone. I'll see you in the next one.